Hiya folks, welcome back to Fishing with Den, and today, as you can see, back on the river. Last time I showed you how to set up the Avon Float, this one, for fishing on fairly pacey rivers with a bit of boiling water in them. So we've come down, as I say, to the tidal river today, and the reason I've come down now is because it's just coming up for low tide. It's not quite gone out, it's still going right to left, but if you look down to my right here, you'll see all this rock and boulders, there's sticks in the water, there's all sorts. Now, when the tide starts to come in, we're going to be fishing probably on top of that lot. So now you can see what I was talking about when I was saying that the Avon Float here is used for sort of pacey and more boily swims. Again, as you can see, it's got a fairly thick top, although I must admit this is a new experimental one today with slightly thinner top, still quite buoyant. It's made out of those very thin reeds that you get in these fragrancing things. I'll put a picture up above because you won't know what I'm talking about probably. But they're very light and they're also very flexible, they don't break. My other ones are slightly thicker and they're balsa, and potentially if you really give it a hard whack, I suppose you could break it, although I have never actually broken one. But this is a good alternative, nice and thin and nice and flexible. The body, as you see, it's fairly bulbous, got a bit of a shoulder on it here, and then tapers down to this lower half here, or lower area here, which is actually spring steel. It's 1mm piano wire, which means it's sort of nice and flexible, and it's going to bend and whatever. So, the idea is that we're going to trot this down through there, once the tide goes that way, which will be in a short while, but again, you'll see that it's fixed at the top, and I did show you this on the last one, so I'll put a quick link up there just now. If you want to watch that video on the setup first of all, then watch that first and then come back, because today is all about fishing it. But very, very briefly then, it's connected at 3 points. There's a rubber up here, a rubber here, and a rubber here, and this rubber actually extends a little bit down past the base of the float here to prevent some tangles. I'm using a 4AA float, and it has the AAs split up into BBs down there as a bulk. And the reason for that is that we're not going to be fishing on the drop. We want it to get down there, and we want it to get down fast. Got a quick change swivel there with a number 6 shot just above it, so I can mess around with different shots. And there's also a number 4 shot here, so I can, if it starts to get really fast, I can really sort of tie this bait down. I can also juggle with putting with putting these shots up and down the line too. Hook length is only about 8 inches long, because I try not to get shot on there, but I'm fishing for bigger fish today. In fact, I'm fishing for carp, but this is the sort of tackle you'd use for barbel back in the UK. Quick sort of recap, you don't need anything too special by way of rods. Just as I explained in the last video, I'm using a 12-foot Drennan Series 7 puddle chucker because it's what I've got. I'm not going to go out and buy anything too expensive. And I've got a Matrix 4000 size reel on because it's heavy duty fishing. I've got 0.28mm thick line on there, which is the 8-pound Guru drag line, and a 6-pound bottom. So, as I say, if you look down there, that's where we're going to be fishing. But I'm just going to take a quick break for a while now and wait for the water to come up. I've got a few things to do. So I'll get back to you as soon as the tide started to go that way and we got somewhere to fish. And then we'll crack on, we'll see if we can catch a few. Okay, well, it's about an hour later, and the tide should have turned at 10 o'clock. It's now, in fact, it's 11:30 now. Must be something to do with all that water that was coming down, because it's way off the timings that they said it would be. So anyway, we're going to start doing some fishing, but what I've got to do first of all, before we get into it, just got to set this zoom camera up so you can see the thing trotting down, and we'll get ourselves all together, and then we'll actually see if we can catch something. Right, well, that's the camera set up, I think. I'm having a look at it and it seems to be okay. First of all then, I'm going to plumb up. Now, there's 2 ways of doing this. You can do it similar to normal, because you're not going to be casting very far. I'm going to be fishing maybe a rod length out sort of thing. So if I go down there, at that point, if I hold up to the bottom, you can see catching on the bottom. That's what you've got to be careful of. So right under my rod tip down there, I've got about maybe 18 inches of water. If I go a bit further out, yep, going down, a bit further again, and yeah, we're just edging along the bottom at sort of one rod length out, which is literally from there to there. Now, you don't have to use a plummet. What you can do, especially if it's a boily sort of fast river, just caught my finger with the hook, what you can do is just hose under arm casting with this sort of rig, put it in and just let it trot through without bait on first of all. Now obviously I know I'm pretty much right, but it does go off quite steeply down there, so got to be a little bit careful. Just catching bottom there, look, catching again. So what I'll do is I'm going to come down about 6 inches just to that shot there. There we go. Now something to be aware of as well is wind. Oh yes, okay Dan, it's going well. Right, is wind. When you're fishing with an Avon float, you're trying to keep the line above the float on the surface, and a bit more about that later, but basically if the current's going that way and the wind's going that way, that's what you want. When the current's going that way and the wind's going the same way, it makes it very, very difficult to control. So if you can, try and get like I've got today, where the wind is against the current. So let's just put this out again to roughly whereabouts I think I'm going to be. And just allow it to trot through. It's moving through fairly slowly at the moment because, as I say, the tide's coming in. If you're not fishing a tidal river, you're probably going to have that sort of pace going through. Again, just touching bottom there, so that's actually not too bad. We'll go with that for now and we'll be adjusting as we go. Now, as I said, I'm going to be fishing for bigger fish, so I'm going to use a couple of bits of sweet corn on this size 10 hook. And as you saw, just an underarm flick, preferably downstream of where you are. Oops. Now that's actually moving through quite nicely. Now we have to consider feeding. We've probably got about 5 feet of water out there. I'll run it through a couple of times just to see. Now I know it does shallow up a little bit further down the swim, so you're holding the rod and you're using your finger. This is the middle finger to control things, and if it goes under, just give it a quick jerk like that and that usually releases it. It's actually quite cold today. I'm actually freezing under these trees. Having a little bit of an issue with this finger at the moment, so we may have to do this slightly differently. Normally what you'd do is you'd cast out, you'd be holding the rod and just using this finger like that to control it. So as the float goes down, you're just letting line off, keeping in contact with it, allowing the float just to go down at pace. As I say, at the moment it's very slow, and you can then just use your finger to trap it. If you get a bite, just do that and you're in. Okay? What you don't want is, if you do get a bite, so you're doing this, if you do get a bite, you don't want to be doing this and this sort of thing, okay? As you saw, it's very straightforward. Get out there, okay? And then literally, and that's it. And obviously make sure your clutch is set correctly, especially if you're fishing for big fish. Right, so that's the basic idea. I may not have to be able to do it that way today because obviously I've got that finger issue with my index finger. So what we may end up doing, slightly different way of doing it, not as efficient, is I may end up just letting it go down like that and controlling with this finger. May need to just shallow up just a little bit. We keep catching the bottom in the same place just there, look. But then that, it literally is that. So that's what we may end up doing today, and see how we go. As you've seen, if you've got any sort of current on at all, the float going down, because it's a 4AA float, will actually peel line off the spool, and you can control it, as I say, with that finger if need be. That's probably what I'll do today, because it's still not quite right on the index finger, but I was desperate to get out on the river. I just hope there's a few fish down here after all these floods. So at this point I've decided to show you the whole thing in close-up. Bear in mind I'm left-handed, so any of you righties out there, you'll be doing it the opposite way around. And what we're going to be doing is using the middle finger and the third finger over the bail arm to do the control. Okay, we can also to some extent use the index finger here, this one, to control the line as it comes off the reel. So if I open the bail arm and just trap the line like that for now, okay, and then what I'll do is I'll allow the line to start going out like so, and then as you see I can be trapping, I can be releasing like that, and then when we get a bite, bail arm comes up like that, all in one movement between the two fingers, and you're ready to go like that. And that's all there is to it. I think I might just go a little bit shallower because, yeah, whoa, we're catching on the bottom. And of course, that's why, as I said, you've got the lighter hook length down here. Always check your hooks and hook lengths as well when you snag up, because if you're on those rocks, you really may find that you've got blunt hooks and a braided line. So I'll come down another 6 inches. Now you're probably asking why I'm not feeding at the moment. Okay, got a bit of a wind knot here, look. Something to be careful of. And that's because I just want to get myself sorted out with where I'm going to be fishing before I start putting feed in. Unlike a still water, rivers move, obviously. So if you put your feed in down there, unless you've worked out where it's going to go, you're not sure where it's actually going to end up, and I'll explain that more in a second or two. Let's just make sure that this trots down nicely. Right, doesn't hurt to give yourself just a little bit of time like this. See, we're dragging bottom there, but we'll see how we go. It may end up going a bit shallower, but if I end up catching fish just a little bit past that, which is what I want to do, because of course the last thing you want to do is to be feeding down here and catching fish just down here, and then especially with big fish, catching fish right under your rod tip, because if they're thrashing around in there, it's going to scare everything. So you want to be catching fish further down the swim, down that way. So I've got about, let's call it 4.5, 5 feet of water, and you actually need to know how fast bait sinks. For example, sweet corn sinks at something like 5 seconds per foot. So if we've got 4 feet, it's going to take 20 seconds to get from the surface where you throw it to where it's going to end up on the bottom. So let's actually just do that. I go down to there, and then 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. So as you can see, it's gone from the rod being in this position to down there. It's probably a good, I don't know, what, 8 feet at the moment. And of course, as the flow gets faster, so the oh, somebody coming down in a speedboat. Oh no, we do get speedboats along here, by the way. So as the flow gets faster, it obviously is going to go further away. So what you don't want to do is put your feed in the wrong place and have it, say, way down there by the time it gets to the bottom, or throw it up there and it's down here. So given the way the thing is at the moment, the current, if I just grab some corn Right, so I'm just going to keep loose feeding just for the moment, just to see how this goes. There's no rush with this sort of thing. It's not as though you're fishing a match. So that's how you can feed if you're going to be loose feeding. Now if you're fishing with maggots and so on, I think they take about 7 or 8 seconds per foot to get down. So again, you could be feeding in the wrong place. So another option is to use one of these. This is a bait dropper. Let me just hook myself up a second. This is a bait dropper. You attach it to the hook, which I'll show you in a second. You put bait in here, close the lid, close that, and then cast it out. Then when it hits the bottom, that does that. All the bait falls out right next to the bottom. So wherever this bait dropper is, your bait is going to be probably from here to here, so you know exactly where it is. Let's actually show you that as well now, because we'll probably feed that way today because I want to concentrate some bait. So there's the hook through the loop, and just put it in the back of the cork there, like that, and then we'll put some bait on it. Now I've got some hemp seed, I've got corn, so I'm going to put some hemp seed in there. I'm going to put corn in. I've also got some wheat because I like to fish with wheat, but mostly today, because I'm going to be feeding it, I'm going to be fishing it as well, it's going to be corn. Right, so again, this is heavy at this point, so what you need to do, see how the rod's bending? You can use a lot smaller ones than this, and you can buy these in the tackle shops. So I want that to be somewhere about there. There we go. Let it hit the bottom, pull it in, and there you go. It's all disgorged, look. When that hit the bottom, oops, as I said, that hits the bottom, the bait all came out. So this time I'm going to put some hemp seed in, and I'll put some this wheat in as well. I like wheat, very similar to corn in many ways, smaller obviously, and I dyed mine red. So again, these bait droppers are homemade on the 3D printer. So there we go. Did that come up on there? Yeah, just about, I think. Maybe just raise that a fraction. See how we go. Right, and then just reel in again. So that's the bait dropper. Now I'm actually going to put 3 or 4 of these in because that's how I'm going to feed today. But as I say, depending on the day, depending on the fish, and depending on what bait you're going to use, you may end up just loose feeding as I was showing you. But just be aware that where you put it in isn't where it ends up, like I said, so be very careful of that. Right. That seems like a reasonable place to have it. And yeah, I can just about see the float as well. Do one more bait dropper full. It is carp after all, but this is the same for barbel. You know, you may well end up doing this sort of thing. Not a good idea necessarily to try and do an overhead chuck with these things. I never do that, but you know, I suspect what would happen if you did is that it would probably not do what is expected of it. Oops. Just get that in there. Should have maybe bought a lighter one today than that, but that's okay. Okay, that'll do. So that, of course, is the second way of doing it. Take it off, just let the hook off the cork, bring it back through the loop. There we go. And of course, the other thing you can do is to use ground bait. The thing with ground bait is that sinks at something just under a second per foot, so you can put that in a lot closer to where you're expecting to be getting bites. because instead of taking, as I say, 5 seconds per foot, which is 20 seconds to get down there, this will take 4 seconds. So again, you just have to judge where your bait's going to wind up from where you put it in. But hopefully we've got that sort of particles in there now, and all being well, we might just get a bite. So as we said before, then I'm going to do it with this hand. Again, it looks like we might need to, yeah, we're caught on something. Might need to just go a little bit shallower, and that's what I was saying about plumbing up. It's not always necessary to do it with a plummet. Tide is coming in a bit now, and the current is getting a bit quicker, which is good. I suspect there's a boulder or something just down there, and that's part of the reason why I'm just snagging up at that point. Either that or it just comes up shallow. Sometimes it does. Never really know. But I'm trotting through quite nicely now without snagging up. So I'm just off the bottom. Let's try a little bit closer in. Definitely getting a lot more pacey. And the tide's only just started to come in, so we'll see how this float with the slightly thinner top copes. That just dragged under there. Not sure if that was a bite. Probably not. Alright, I've lost a bit of bait. Now, as I say, depending on how things go with the current and how the fish want it, I may well end up moving this shot down. Don't necessarily want to move it further up. This number 4 has decided to not sit properly. Wouldn't normally move it further up, and in fact I'm very close now to getting sort of half and half from there, so be careful of that. It can lead to swing arounds and tangles. We'll give it a little while of running it through like this, but I think at some point I'm just going to go a bit deeper, and what we'll do is hold back so that the bait just rises and falls and rises and falls. Definitely catching on bottom there already. I did mention earlier on about the wind direction, and as I said, current going that way, wind wants to go that way, because as you can see, that blows the line back this way and keeps everything nice and neat. If it was both going the same way, the line would actually travel down faster than the float, and then you'd have to mend it, which we'll come back to shortly. You can see how the current is holding the line off the water, hopefully, and it's keeping everything very straight and very direct. And already the bank there that was all visible previously is starting to disappear underwater, so we will be able to trot closer and closer as the tide comes in, and at the same depth, because it's always changing on a tidal river. Yay, there we go. Didn't take long, did it? How long have we been fishing? 10 minutes or so? I don't think he's a huge fish. But I'm pretty sure he's not a huge fish. But he's very welcome. The other thing you get down here, you won't be able to see it just yet, but there's rafts of sticks and so on all coming down in front of me. Save leverage on your arm. It helps if you just put the butt of the rod just down where you can see it now. Right. Got to be careful because down on the inside here there are tree roots all along the edge. This is one of the smaller ones, but as I say, very welcome. Come on, fish. There we are. Well, there we go, first fish. Let's have a look what we got. It's a long way down. There we are, look. He's probably only £3 or so, but very, very welcome, eh? Right, see if we can get a few more. Same again then, 2 pieces of corn. And as I always say, wash, rinse, repeat. Oops. Actually very easy to do, isn't it? A little bit of jiggling around just to get yourself sorted. But yeah, just talking about this mending the line, you always want to have a reasonably straight line between the float and the tip. And the way to do that is, in this case, because of the wind, just hold back a fraction. That raises the bait up as well, and very often you get a bite straight afterwards, but I think that was the bottom. But in the event that the line has got bowed, all you do is you just lift and move it over like that, or that way if you need to. You'll soon get the hang of it. Now today for me is a bit of an experimental day. As I say, I'm using this float with a slightly thinner tip on it, which seems to be working okay at the moment. But I don't normally use ground bait down here because of the fact that I'm catching bigger fish like these carp. I generally use the bait dropper. But one of the things I do want to do today is to feed ground bait, just see how that goes. As I say, there's more than one way to skin a cat, so we'll give that a go at some point, I think. So I'm just slowing this down now as well. As I say, before I was allowing it to go through at the speed of the current. You can hold back, which lifts the bait up, but now I'm just slowing it down a little bit as it goes through. And then again, you can just allow it then to run if you want to. All these different variations can get you a bite. And if you get your feeding right, you'll know pretty much where the bites are going to come from, because obviously that's where your bait is. If you don't get it right, it's going to be a bit problematic, isn't it? Right, so I'm going to start using some ground bait, and I'm going to put some of everything in it, quite a lot of everything in it, because I want it to get all my particles down to the bottom. And we'll just mix all that about. Plenty and plenty in. Just be careful that you don't over wet the ground bait, because obviously you're taking it out of, taking the corner stuff out of water. So put a couple of these in, and then I'm going to feed a smaller one of those, well, pretty regularly actually for a while, see what happens. Right, just get myself a cloth. Got one down here somewhere. Okay, got some bait on. And as you see, we're getting somewhat deeper, so let's put this in and just judge where I want it to be. I want to be closer in than that. and probably, yeah, somewhere sort of a bit further past that. Now I'm left-handed, so I'm going to do it this way. Right, so by the time that gets to the bottom, it's going to be around about 2, 3, 4, sort of about there-ish. Now unfortunately there's a lump of bamboo coming down, which isn't helping. Typical, isn't it? There's a load of this stuff all just coming down in front of me now. These things are sent to try me, Den. They certainly do. Right, so get some bait in, sort of there-ish. Fingers playing a little bit with the cold, and in a minute you'll see what I was talking about with all these rafts of rubbish coming down. Yay! And that was holding back hard on that one. Literally, oh, this is a decent fish, I think. I think it's a very good fish, in fact. I was all but keeping it stationary. I don't know if it's showing up on that zoom camera down there when it went, but because it's winter they're a bit more lethargic than they have been in the summer, obviously. But this feels like a decent fish. And he's out there in the middle. Now I've got to be careful down there because of all those tree roots. As you see, by fishing down there and fighting up here, hopefully we aren't scaring them too much. Yeah, not bad. This is a 4.5 metre landing net handle and it's still struggles sometimes to get down to the bottom down there. Oops. Right, these things always fight at the net. This time, come on, it's winter, give up. Oh, he tried to get out, he just hadn't quite got the energy. Whew. Right, that's a decent fish. That's not a bad fish at all, in fact. Only thing is, I'm stuck around that plant with my rig. Bear with me a sec. Let's get rid of that. Must cut some of this foliage down. But that isn't a bad fish at all. I'd say close to 6 or 7-ish, something like that. But yeah, that's all right, isn't it? And when you think they go 3 or 4 times that size, get some decent fish in here. Right, let's get another one. Looks like that holding back did the trick. The thing is, keep varying it because you never know. Things can change. And all I'd done was worked out where my ground bait was going to hit the bottom and held on at that point. Or held back rather at that point. Ooh, cold. I've just been putting a ball in every couple of chucks, but not a big ball, just a small handful. I'll just hold it back there a second. I'll show you what I'm talking about. It goes under about there, which is where that snag is, but small enough ball, good squeeze, and out we go, and then we should be good to go. I'd put my coat on if it could be bothered to stand up. Right, so I'm holding this back. You see I've got the rod up, I'm holding the line off the water, and I'm just holding the float back and really slowing it down. If this is coming up on that zoom camera, you can probably see ripples and things. That's catching on the bottom there. Yeah, stick. Really slowing it down. And that's what the shoulder was for, as I was explaining maybe a little bit earlier, sorry. It's about sort of there that I need to be, so we'll just allow it to come in a bit. You can move your float around in the current as well, because you can bring it in like snagged up. Whoa! Nearly. I thought that was a bite, but I wasn't absolutely sure. Hardly moved it, did it? Come on, get out of the swim. Again, holding back is what's doing it. You can tell the water must be cold then, because these fish are pretty lethargic. They're responding to the ground bait, but am I having to slow it down? In fact, I'm virtually having to keep it still to get a bite. And that's okay, because you can do that with an Avon too. It's not generally the intended thing, but hey, it works. I've aced that coming down. Come on, fish. Come on. Just put, ouch. Oh, it's underneath all that. Not huge, but big enough to be fun. Whew. My finger was starting to go there. Under that thing again. I must trim that back at some point. They're actually short, thick fish in here, which is a bit of a surprise, because you'd think in a river they'd be longer and thinner. However, quick look for you. A bit like a chub in some ways, isn't it? Sort of shape of that. I don't know, 3.5-ish probably, something like that. But so there you go then, folks. I've decided to call an end to the video at this point, although I did catch a few more fish. It's basically a wash, rinse, repeat of what I'd already shown you. And because this was a tutorial right from the outset, there didn't seem much point in just rehashing everything. So, as I say, we'll call it quits at that. Hopefully, you did actually learn some stuff about how to float fish on rivers, particularly with the Avon Float, how to trot it through at the speed of the current, how to hold it back so that the bait lifts up, how to hold it back hard so the bait is either virtually stationary or actually stationary, and how to cope with different conditions. We also talked obviously about how to feed, whether you just loose feed, whether you use a bait dropper, or indeed if you use ground bait. So anyway, that's it for another one. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly did, and certainly catching fish on the float is one of the best ways to fish a river. But anyway, all things have to come to an end, and that's the end of this. So, as I say, as always, if you liked it, give me a click on the like button, please. If you want to subscribe, that's great. And until the next time, bye for now.